Fame is a funny thing. You can see someone photographed from every angle, hang their poster on your wall, listen to albums, memorize lyrics, obsess over them. But can you ever really know that person? Fame is an illusion, a magic trick that's played both on the audience and the magician. It's hard to look away from because it's everywhere, all the time. And now, episode 1, after all these years.
Every Australian has their frog stomp story.
My brother had frog stomp and he'd just crank it out of his bedroom.
This is Kevin Parker from Tame and Parlour.
Something blasting out of your older brother's bedroom from behind a closed door, it's always going to sound awesome because you're like, whoa, what is that? You know? So yeah, that was the first Silverchair experience.
It's funny because I had a similar thing but with my cousin.
Okay.
She had the CD and we were just playing it non-stop.
Yeah.
It was the mid-90s. Plaid shirts, grunge, and bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam ruled the radio. In 1995, Silverchair released their debut album, Frog Stomp, and defined a generation of teens. Frog Stomp's single Tomorrow was written when lead singer Daniel Johns was just 14, recorded when he was 15, and it exploded internationally by the time he was 16.
Straight up, it was Silverchair. I was like, man, you don't just have to be American. You don't have to be mid-20s. It gave me belief that I could be a teenage rock star. I remember being about 13 and thinking that I had 2 years left.
I'm Caitlin Sorey, a journalist and music fan, and by the time I discovered Triple J on my clock radio, Silverchair had taken over the world.
Please welcome all the way from down under, Silverchair!
Frog Stomp would go on to sell about 3 million copies worldwide. Since then, Daniel Johns has released many more albums, had countless collaborations, and Silverchair have won more ARIA awards, that's Australia's Grammy, than any band in history, 21 if you're counting. And at age 42, he's been writing the soundtrack to our lives for almost 30 years. But the ride hasn't always been smooth. He's struggled with mental health, an eating disorder, and has been photographed in the street, drunk and shirtless. Daniel Johns has spent most of his life in the public eye, but what do we even know about him? He rarely does interviews, but for the first time, he wants to talk. Like, really talk.
I'm not very comfortable doing interviews as such a lot of the time. I guess it's just an opportunity to kind of remember stuff and accurately give my version of events.
I want to be clear. This isn't a Silverchair documentary. Over the next 5 episodes, we're going to find out who Daniel Johns really is. We'll unpack this creative enigma through the major themes of his life: fame, loneliness, creation, self-destruction, and rebirth. We're going to meet all of his closest people, his friends, his collaborators, and even one of his great loves, Natalie Imbruglia.
Who is Daniel Johns? The first thing that springs to mind is musical genius. Also Peter Pan, maybe?
I think Daniel is probably one of the last true enigmas of the world. He's like a rare bird.
Daniel is a supremely talented child prodigy who has failed to live up to his promise. Does that mean?
Who is Daniel Johns?
If only Daniel knew. He's an alien from outer space. He must be. Well, he's a very, very complex person.
And Dan sits down with some of his favourite musicians, like Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins.
I can see you at, 15, 16 years old singing, on stage in the Australian sun, many summers ago. Yeah. If you'd asked me hey, what do you think this kid's got a future? I would have said no chance in hell.
I mean, actually, before we get too deep into it, do you have any questions for us about how this is going to kind of go forward?
No, I actually don't. I've always just liked being surprised and then just going with instinct rather than having Excel spreadsheets and something mapped out.
To start to understand Daniel Johns, we visit his home. He still lives in Newcastle, 5 minutes away from where he grew up. When you arrive at Dan's house, the first thing you see is a panoramic view of the ocean. And the first thing that happens is that you're greeted by the dogs, Gia and Ziggy.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, buddy. Thank you. You're beautiful. How you doing?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
Smashing Pumpkins on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, sick. What year is that?
97? Are we recording?
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing, never not recording.
Okay, great.
Dan's house is full of inspiration, like the portrait on his piano.
Is that Prince?
That is Prince, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
He's a dude.
He is.
You hear the stories about the Paisley Palace. And
I
it's
like it, you don't fuck around, do you?
Oh, it's just I'm noticing things.
Yeah.
His place feels like a Frank Lloyd Wright with a pool fit for a pharaoh. But there's a hole in the ceiling, and when it rains, it leaks onto the piano.
This is great. What happened here? This is storm damage?
Yeah, we had to cut holes in the roof to siphon the water out. The piano was all under tarps and stuff as well, but I couldn't resist. I had to play something yesterday. I got that when I moved into this house. I bought that piano, and that's when I taught myself how to play piano and wrote diorama. Like literally sitting right there.
The piano hasn't moved since?
I haven't ever moved that piano. There's some magical voodoo in that corner.
The house is full of Daniel's favourite things.
There's like all sorts of interesting knickknacks, like 2 life-size ceramic dogs, purple couches, a candelabra with all the candles burnt down. Oh, what is this? You've got like it's almost like a Tutankhamun.
Yeah, that's my Egyptian artifact that I found at the bottom of the Great Pyramids when I was 4. Just joking.
Where did you find it?
I got it at an old antique store, but it's legit.
Do you want to give us a tour?
Sure. All right. This is an audio podcast. It's not going to make any sense.
No, but there's lots of things to look at.
All right. Let's come for a walk. Come on, Ziggy.
It's like walking around a Daniel Johns exhibit. Producer Frank Lopez and I couldn't help but poke around.
That train is the first toy that I ever got when I was a baby. Oxygen tank from when I was arthritic. I used to have to lay in that for 3 hours a day.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did it work?
It did work. It actually did work, yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's like a fucking, I don't know, like a astronaut. So it's completely just pure oxygen to try and regenerate your cells so you can walk again. My dad needed to sit and just watch me for just to make sure I didn't suffocate. That was a good time.
How long do you have to do that for?
Every day for about 2 years. Yeah, good time.
And of course, there's music gear everywhere.
This micro synthesizer is probably my favourite pedal that ever existed in the history of the universe. You can make your guitars sound like a synth. So when people go, why do you not play guitar anymore? It's like, I am. It's just going through that.
But there isn't a computer in sight.
All this shit's analog because I don't know how to turn a computer on. So I have to be analog.
Every room we enter brings up a memory.
So this is the old studio. That's covering a hole in the wall because one time I threw a guitar through the wall because I couldn't get the take right. Facts.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a hole in the wall.
Yep.
Did you get the take eventually?
Yeah. I just needed to have a little tantrum for a sec.
But for all the memories and music in his house, there's one thing that's missing. Silverchair.
When we see my mum's house, you'll see all the other... I spoke to my mum yesterday and she was like, I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, I'm just polishing all your awards. And I was like,
Oh, Mum.
she's like trying to make it all nice.
So
no one gives a shit. It's audio. That's the only plaque I've got.
Why are the dissociatives the only ones you have?
I don't know. I think that just Silverchair had some very strange emotional veins and things to it. It's not that I'm not proud of it, but for some reason, Silverchair, I don't want it around. I think everyone has had enough.
It's been over 10 years since the last Silverchair record. I couldn't help but wonder, why would Dan avoid his greatest triumph? How did he go from playing to 250,000 people at Rock in Rio to this?
I won't even get Silverchair back together for $1 million with a gun to my head.
To understand how Dan got here, we have to ride the roller coaster of fame with someone who was there every step of the way.
So, just to start, if you could say your name and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's John Watson. I was Silverchair's manager throughout their career.
What's the role of a manager for people who don't really understand what that job looks like?
Most people sort of get their idea of it from things they see in movies, people hanging artists out of their window by their ankles or something. Managers really exist to do what artists either don't want to do for themselves or can't do for themselves. I'm a huge believer that managers should be behind the scenes people, and so I don't like to do interviews at all. I'm doing this because Daniel asked me to do it. And if you could please just include the fact that I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, we absolutely will. It'll be how we open your scene.
Okay.
John first heard about Silverchair in 1994 when he was working at a record label.
Everyone at Triple J is talking about this band that recorded some songs over the weekend in the Triple J studios. They've won some demo competition that SBS has been running. It hasn't been put to air yet.
He tracked down a number for their mums and headed to Newcastle for their next gig.
The band played in the bistro out the back of Jules Tavern with 6 people there. 3 or 4 were just watching the footy on TV. They had most of the songs that would be on Frog Stomp and a bunch of covers. I've still got the set list. And it's the most extraordinary thing, that you could ever imagine seeing. It was always our belief that, if they're capable of doing this at 15, imagine what they'll do at 25 if they're just given the chance.
John knew that getting the band to 25 wouldn't be easy, so he did something managers never do. He trusted the band's instincts.
When they first started their sort of system, it was pretty binary. Things were either hell, which meant it was good, or they sucked, which meant it wasn't good. So our job was to make sure that they just did stuff that was hell and avoided stuff that sucked.
What was the strategy?
You try to only talk to music press, avoid all the tabloid sensationalism, avoid the teen magazines, avoid pop radio, avoid mainstream music television. Try as much as possible to get people to see you play live. Because once people saw them play live, they're like, hey, they're legit.
John Watson's gamble on the band's complicated hell or suck system paid off.
So by the time Frog Stomp landed, it was definitely that record of a generation thing.
And with a bit of luck, Tomorrow wasn't just a hit in Australia. It started getting picked up in the States, just by word of mouth.
There were 4 radio stations in America that started playing this song. There was an intern at a station called 89X outside of Detroit who had a sister who was backpacking in Australia who sent him back the CD and said, this is the best thing ever. And he took it into the program director. They started playing it. And so the first time that we took the band into the States, instead of doing the usual thing of playing LA and New York, we went and did Atlanta, Chicago and Detroit and brought all of the other people from New York and LA into those markets to see the band play to 1,000 rabid fans.
And just like that, the world knew about Silverchair.
In America, they were a band that had a massive first record, like a double platinum first record. Then, they were a band that would come out of the gates and just sell tickets like bang.
Within months, the 3 teenagers from Newcastle were on the world stage, opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I remember that just being unbelievable. Like, a year before we were playing in taverns in Newcastle and then we're playing Madison Square Garden. I'm just going, like, how are we even here? And to be honest, from that moment when we started doing the America stuff, my recollections get really, really vague because I just felt like we were just in
hyperspeed.
Yeah.
The story surrounding the fever that took over Silverchair crowds are the stuff of legends. Here's Nick Launay, producer for everyone from Silverchair to Kate Bush and Nick Cave.
I'm trying to remember now if I first met them at a gig, because they did the big day out and they were on the little stage. And the little stage wasn't little. There were more people interested in seeing them at age 14 than all those big bands. And they couldn't fit enough people in, so people were climbing on roofs, they were climbing up lampposts. It was absolutely amazing. It was like footage I've seen of the Beatles. It was just teenagers losing it, and grown-ups too. People were on the roofs. I remember there was like these big lampposts, so many people like monkeys climbing up this lamppost that the lamppost then bent over. It was like a palm tree.
Remember, this was 1995. Kurt Cobain had just died the year before, and record labels were on the hunt for the next Nirvana. Teenage Dan looked a lot like Kurt. Headlines like Nirvana in pajamas and Sound Kindergarten were everywhere. But it wasn't just the media. Courtney Love saw it too.
And we walked out to watch Hole, and then she just went on this round like, what's this Silverchair about? He sounds like Eddie Vedder and he looks like my dead husband. And I was mortified. I could feel my face getting hot. I was red. I was just like, oh my God, this is so fucking embarrassing.
Being labelled the second coming of Kurt stoked the hysteria, and the roller coaster of fame started to teeter off the tracks.
I'm just kind of just being in a constant state of shock, which I think is why my memory's a bit vague around that time. You know, and you black trauma out. Not that it was traumatic, but I think I just blacked it out because it was too overwhelming. I remember in Australia it being absolutely psycho, like playing festivals, and we'd turn up and it was really full on and like teenage girls, and we were like in Dolly magazine and shit. I just remember it being really bizarre.
Someone who was there from the back rooms of bars to the Big Day Out Festival was Aussie legend and frontwoman for Magic Dirt, Adelita.
You could feel in the air, you could just feel that a riot could start at any minute, especially with Daniel. That was where the hysteria was really in danger of, you know, disintegrating into a riot. You know, if they can't see him or get a hold of him or be near him, that's all the really hysterical fans wanted, was to touch him, to grab a piece of him, literally. And that was just the tip of the iceberg.
By the end of it, I didn't know what I'd got myself into.
Danger didn't always come from hordes of screaming fans. John Watson tells us the real danger came from what you couldn't see. Heads up, what we're about to talk about includes discussion of suicide.
I answer my phone at home. I don't know how they've got my number. It's a person with an American accent that says, I need to talk to Daniel Johns right now or I'm going to shoot myself. And I said, well, he doesn't live with me, you know, and he's a young person. He can't actually help you. He just writes songs. There are people that can help you. The person came straight over the top of me and said, put him on the next 10 seconds or I'm going to shoot myself. I said, there are people you can call for help. Da-da-da-da-da. Bang. Still don't know if that person killed themselves or if they were just trying to talk to Daniel. So there was that. Same week that I got the gun phone call, I get this other phone call from a young girl, and she's crying hysterically. I need to talk to Daniel right now. I'm pregnant with his baby. I'm thinking, this is immaculate conception. There's no chance, right? This girl's got a Southern American accent. I'm like, oh, really? That must be very upsetting for you. And where are you? She goes, I'm in Atlanta. I'm like, oh, right, you're in Atlanta. And where did you meet Daniel? She goes, well, you know, I met him at the show that they did at the Roxy. I said, oh, that's very interesting. I said, because he actually got in the car with me after the show and I drove him back to the hotel. And she was sobbing hysterically. And when I said that, she stopped crying and went, oh, well, it was worth a try. Another example more directly involving Daniel, which was creepy as hell. A number of the more obsessive crazies that would come after Daniel seemed to be women about his mother's age who had often had, sadly, terminations around the time that Daniel had been born, and they became obsessed with this idea that Daniel was the son that they had never had. There were many of these people. There was one in particular who was French, who used to send these long missives, and she kept turning up at gigs in Europe, and like she was recognised by face, and she kept somehow, like Daniel would be on stage and she'd get onto someone's shoulders and there she'd be again. And she kept getting backstage and we couldn't. She turned up in New Orleans out at the stage door. She stalked him all around the world. And finally she got backstage at the Reading Festival in England. And I said to the security, stop right there. I need to figure out how this person is getting backstage because she doesn't have a pass. And we managed to find the person that had let her in. And they said, well, she showed the driver's license to show that she is Daniel's mother. And that's when we remembered that 9 months earlier, Juliet had her wallet stolen on a train in France. And this woman had stolen Daniel's mother's wallet and got her driver's license and used it around the world. But as I say, 99% of people, 99.9% of people are not like that at all. But the one that's trying to get backstage is that one.
Dan's safety was at risk, so the decision was made to have full-time security.
There's no worse feeling than looking over your shoulder all the time. We ended up having to get like a military security guard. And I remember I ended up having a laugh with the security guard. I was like, show me all your shit. Because I was so bored. So bored of being fucking paranoid. And then he just opened up his suitcase and it was like grenades and guns. And can you imagine being 17 and every time he needed to do a piss, he had to follow me and stand right beside me? It's kind of hilarious, but I find absurdity hilarious.
Did that level of protection make you feel safer?
It made me feel anxious, like really, really anxious.
From screaming teenagers to transcontinental stalkers, to survive stardom, you need more than guards with grenades. You need some real friends.
I'll go into sexy microphone mode for this. Hey, I'm Paul Mack.
This is Paul Mack. He's one of Dan's oldest friends and musical collaborators and has been around for a lot of this journey.
Do you remember the first time you guys met?
I do. Yeah.
Itchy and Scratchy won an ARIA in 1995, and it was for the Best Dance release, and it was for this song we had called Sweetness and Light. The cameras come zooming towards you. It's like, oh, shit, I think we've won. And then you go into slow motion and you start running towards the stage, and it's like this freaky dream sequence. And then you get to the microphone, it's like, oh, I didn't actually prepare a speech. And I just kind of went into this stream of consciousness thing.
This track was made at home in a bedroom, so anybody can do it. So, and all the DJs who play it, all the public radio stations, all the ravers, all the everybody, thank you very much.
That ended on ecstasy dealers.
I just happened to be watching it on TV. I started laughing my dick off.
So apparently the story I got from the manager was that Daniel said, I want to work with the ecstasy guy.
It took me a year to finally meet you, right? It took me a year to finally meet Paul. And I think you were the one responsible for the 5-second delay for the entire...
That's right. They introduced the delay after that year.
Yeah, you were responsible.
Dan and Paul have had a lot of fun times. They even had their own side project, the Dissociatives.
The Dissociatives go to Europe and do a bunch of shows, and Daniel's like, wait till you play in Paris. They're fucking nuts. They go so hard over there. And it was true. For me, it felt like the Beatles' Hard Day's Night after the gig and running back to the hotel and crazy fans everywhere. And it was like a level of full on that I hadn't quite felt yet. And then it was like we get back to the hotel and it's like, oh, it'd be nice to go out. And it's like, there's all these fans. It was like, actually, do you want to take us out? So that story could be so much better if I told all the illegal stuff. And then fast forward a year or two later, I'm in New York visiting you, and then I go out somewhere and this guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, I met you in Paris at the Dissociatives. And I was like, oh, fuck, you're that guy that took us out.
Freddie.
And he was an aspiring rapper. And I was like, yeah, of course, honey, all white guys are aspiring rappers. And I didn't think too much about it. And I gave him the latest Itchy and Scratchy instrumental, which is this really twisted piece of music. And he wrote this super twisted rap to it, and he's straight, and it was like, never call me a fag, even when I'm like getting fucked in the ass in a horse in a shack. It was like the most full-on rap.
Cue play the track.
I Breathe the Air Above the Planets by Itchy and Scratchy.
Never call me a bitch, even if I'm sucking dick at the dick, even if I like to sit on the piss looking around for dick I can fit in my legs. I breathe the air of other planets.
Oh, are you right, Kasplashy?
I'm not going to lie to the listeners. We've had a couple of warm-ups, haven't we?
But their time together hasn't been all fun.
The guy that lives across the road.
Paul went through the trenches with me. I'm still so grateful for that, man.
Oh, we did the big day out in 2007 or something. I was playing keys, and at one point the French horn stopped playing, and I turned around and she was bleeding. Her face was bleeding. She'd been hit in the head with a bottle that was aimed at me, full of piss. I knew some people hated me because I was like gaying it up with keyboards or something. So some of that anger was directed at me. But then I also like fed on that. Like I actually had my own Yoko Ono t-shirt printed for that tour. I was like, well, yes, I am fucking Yoko Ono. Deal with it.
That's funny. I mean, that's so hectic, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It was weird playing and literally dodging bottles throughout a set.
As the night continued, the conversation changed. Producer Frank Lopez was also in the room.
I want everyone to just speak the truth, because I got nothing to hide. I got nothing to hide here.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Like, and you know this, like all the like harshness was unfair. Like, he's been nothing but nice to us, you know, and it's just like the more we get to know him, the more frustrated I think even we are.
Just the fucking nature of fame. It's just this weird pact with the devil that somehow you didn't even enter into, you just ended up in it. And it's like, it's affected your whole fucking life. From the moment, since before I met you, you're like probably one of the most famous people in Australia, and probably still are. And it's just comes with these weird set of rules that you somehow have to navigate. And somehow we found a way of making that fun, but it's like it's a package deal.
Yeah, it is a good deal. Yeah. That.
You want some water?
Yeah, let me get you some.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that.
Paul told us a story that might help you understand Dan's intense reaction to his relationship with fame.
When I invited him up to Katoomba, he wasn't going to show up. So I went, no, fuck this. I'm driving to Newcastle. I'm going to get you, and I'm going to take you to Katoomba. And then that was a real eye opener, because once we got up there, I'd be like, why don't you come to the cafe? Let's go get some food and let's do this. And he was really reticent because, no, it's such a hassle. People will yell out at me. It'll be foul. And I was like, shut up, you dick. It'll be fine. We're in Katoomba. I know everyone here. It'll be great. And of course we did go up to the main street, and it was Silverchair suck, faggot, people just yelling out of cars. And I was like, right, this happens every time you leave the house. All right, I understand now. So then I became more protective, I suppose, and it'd be more like, well, let's get some food and hang at home, and let's just build this magical world in the house, rather than sort of that. All that fame shit was just really an eye-opener and just damaging, it's really fucked.
We've come to one of Dan's favourite spots, the cliff near his house. He's written a lot of music here.
I've been coming here for like 20 years, and it used to be like rough terrain. Now they've made it all kind of gentrified, and I'm not sure if I'm a massive fan now, but it's still got the same energy, I guess.
It's a classic Aussie blue sky day on the coast of Newcastle, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and it seems to be a bit of a hangout for hang gliders.
A hang glider just swung by very serenely.
Yeah, he's having a good time.
Yeah, like he's on neutral.
He just looked at us and just smiled, just like, yeah, that's right, I'm a bird.
The cliff is a place where Dan can relax and be himself. A place where he's not the face of Silverchair. He's just Dan.
I think there's a reason people like Prince and Kanye West end up buying compounds and just living by themselves, because it's too much to be in normal society. It's too much. It's too much for some people, and I'm not putting myself on that level, because I'm not. But that's why I just disappear. It's too much. I don't know. I think once you get a taste of something and you don't like it, you don't want to eat it again. And I've tasted it, and I didn't like it. It's like a sea urchin or something.
So, if you don't like fame, why keep doing things that put you in the public eye, like this podcast?
I don't even know why the fuck we're sitting at a cliff doing an interview, to be honest. But I'm happy to do it, because I think it's a good vessel to release art. Above all things, I just want to make art. I would really love for people to hear it. And the only way to get people to hear my art is through vessels like this, because I don't want to perform on stage.
There's not many people who really understand Dan's journey, but someone who does is Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan.
I can see you at 15, 16 years old singing on stage in the Australian sun many summers ago. If you'd asked me hey, what do you think this kid's got a future, I would have said no chance in hell. And the reason I would have said it isn't because you weren't talented. It's just like, how does somebody overcome being this?
Yeah.
Because on one level, you were talented enough to do it. And on another level, you're too young to understand what it was that you were doing as far as how people were going to perceive you.
Yeah.
Hey, if that was me at 16, I would have been all over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
I was dying for somebody to ask me to do something. So my projection on that moment was, oh man, once you're locked into this, I mean, there's no escape.
Right.
You'll forever be branded as that kid. But you had real talent, real world-class talent. So I think it was beautiful that you were able to not only transcend that moment, but also that you had the talent to do that, because I don't think anybody would have figured that. Maybe not even you.
Next time on Who is Daniel Johns, we go inside the place Dan would hide for years, his childhood bedroom, and we meet the Daniel Johns who wants to be left alone but not lonely. If this episode brought up issues for you, there's always someone you can talk to. Check out the show notes for resources.
Are we recording?
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing, never not recording.
Okay, great.
I mean, actually, before we get too deep into it, do you have any questions for us about how this is going to kind of go forward?
No, I actually don't. I've always just liked being surprised and then just going with instinct rather than having Excel spreadsheets and something mapped out.
Daniel Johns, the frontman of Silverchair, was world famous at the age of 15.
Please welcome all the way from down under, Silverchair.
But what do we even know about him?
He's an alien from outer space.
Who is Daniel Johns? The first thing that springs to mind is musical genius. Also Peter Pan, maybe?
I can see you at 15, 16 years old singing, on stage in the Australian sun. If somebody pulled me aside that day watching you and asked me and say, hey, what do you think this kid's got a future? I would have said no chance in hell.
He's worked with some of the most talented people in the world and inspired Australia's next generation of artists.
Straight up, it was Silverchair. It gave me belief that I could be a teenage rock star.
But the ride hasn't been smooth.
Daniel couldn't go anywhere without being swamped, like absolutely swamped. It was celebrity.
We ended up having to get like a military security guard, and then he just opened up his suitcase and it was like grenades and guns.
He struggled with his physical and mental health.
Everybody was worried about his health. He was very, very, very thin.
Lost the love of his life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time to talk about.
Natalie Imbruglia definitely saved his life,
And became a tabloid obsession.
I've been photographed drunk on the street wearing makeup, but this one was completely inaccurate.
After almost 30 years in the spotlight, Daniel Johns is finally telling his own story.
That was the moment where I really kind of clocked it. I was like, okay, now they're after me.
Who is Daniel Johns? A 5-part audio documentary series featuring Billy Corgan, Kevin Parker, Natalie Imbruglia, Tom DeLonge, and more.
We're literally sitting in my bedroom.
Listen free only on Spotify.